are gonna get harder. All right, Kelsier from the Wheel of Time versus Randall Thor from the Wheel of Time versus Kelsier from Mistborn. These two are certainly well regarded within their respective series, but let's go ahead and jump on into the 7 categories for the final 8. Yeah, we're officially in the final 8. Oh, well, Kip's already done, but, you know. Okay, continuing into the final categories. Origin, development, role, interest for the reader, relationships, who would win in a fight, and the tiebreaker that doesn't actually matter unless it's a tie. Who would do better in the other's world? So for Origin, we have Randall Thor, who is the farmer from the Two Rivers, someone who as a reader we can relate to from his humble origins, but there's certainly nothing special about his origins. It's the fantasy trope to a T, as I've mentioned before. Not worth going into much more there. But Kelsier, on the other hand, he doesn't have the most original origin, but it's a very good execution of a more original origin. Having so much taken from him, and without getting into too much spoilers, coming back in such a vicious way towards the evil empire to the point where you can really argue his motivations are villainous is interesting, to say the least. His origin is really why he is so interesting as a character, at least one of the main factors of it. It's something that we as the readers are afraid of happening to us, but admire his reaction to such horrific things as a result. And I think overall that it allows the readers to really excuse some of the more horrific things Kelsier does. But that being said, Kelsier gets the origin point. And now we have development. So Rand, as I've said before, is the king of development in fantasy for me. And I don't need to go into it much more. He goes through his stages. He becomes so massive from so small. There are a few jumps that feel kind of like, did you really earn that jump? I don't know if you did. That was kind of a quick jump. But disregarding those few things, it's really masterfully executed in Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson's hands. So for that reason, I think it's pretty fair to say Rand should get the point. But let's go into Kelsier's a little bit regardless. He doesn't develop much as a character, as I've mentioned, but the unfolding of who he really is relies on his motivations and us figuring out what his real motivations are. Are they pure? No. It's someone seeking revenge. In the Star Wars universe, he'd be a Sith like that. But it's still admirable, and it's a cool execution to have someone's development be the unveiling of such a dark past that has lent him to go down the right road for the wrong reasons, and for the world he's in, it fits, and it's a good execution of that, but it just doesn't stack up to the massive development Rand has from the farm boy to demigod in such a great way. The madness, the man in his head, all these things, you can't really argue it. So I'm going to go ahead and give this point to Rand with a tip of the cap to Kelsier. Not that I would ever wear a hat. I'm not a hat guy. You need to know that about me. No hats. Now we have role they play in the world they are in. And depending on how you're looking at it, these two are evenly matched in some aspects. Rand is the chosen one, which to me is not inherently a lot of bonus points. I don't like chosen one roles, but he's a really good execution of that chosen one trope with the whole madness angle coming in to make the role feel much more unstable. Kelsier is the guide to the chosen one, someone who's bringing a more chosen one type figure into their position. And I like the execution of it. I think it's very good. I think Kelsier was the perfect character for this role because Vin herself has been through so much. Having someone who was also kind of shared a darker past and relates to her in that way was a good choice by Brandon. Having her being taught by someone who was more pure, I think would have taken away a lot of the weight of the Mistborn series overall. That being said, Rand's role is so massive in his series. Being the Dragon Reborn means everything within the Wheel of Time is dependent on him. Every side story relates back to him. Every action relates back to him. And it's done so well. You feel the pressure of his role on Rand so frequently, whether it's anxiety attacks or lashing out at people or kind of losing his mind at times. The amount of pressure on this one man from this role is such a key aspect of his character. This isn't even getting into the destiny and prophecy of it. I think Rand goes ahead with the victory from that alone, which is fair to say. Now we have interest for the reader, and both of these guys are modern fantasy characters, so I don't really have to go with the classic execution of this versus the modern. I can go with a more objective comparison of their interest as they are written. And I think Kelsier is so well regarded in terms of interest because of his origin being so twisted from what we expect. I think that is a lot of it. It's something different and exciting for a hero character, but at the same time, I don't think it really does any huge favors for him in any other real aspects of his interest. I think he is just interesting for his origin, and with him so heavily relying on that origin, not much else there. I mean, his relationships are fine. We're really more just told about his relationship with his friend. Yes, I've read the additional stories with him, and they are fleshed out somewhat, but his personality to me is just not as great as Rand's is. Rand feels like a real person in such a visceral way that I feel like I must give him the point here, mainly just because the execution of such a realistic portrayal of the depression, anxiety, and freaking out nature of him at times makes him feel so much more interesting. I think anyone who reads this story can relate to how poorly he handles common aspects of being the Dragon Reborn at times. So yeah, for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and hand this to Randall Thor, with once again a very nice nod to Kelsier, saying I think it is good, and I think his origin helps boost it up to great almost, but standing in the shadow of Rand is hard to come above it. And now we have relationships. Kelsier's strongest one is with Vin. I will maintain that. Yes, his relationship with his crew is fleshed out in outside the main Mistborn story. I still don't see a whole lot of real back and forth beyond just nice moments, but the development of relationships is good, but I wouldn't call it outstanding. And I don't think Rand's relationships are perfect. I sound like I'm just him off at this point, but yes, Rand is absolutely incredible with a lot of his relationships. My opinion, mostly internally with Lews Therin and himself and dealing with the role he's in, and with villains. I love his relationship with the villains. When we pull back from Rand a little bit more and we're not exactly sure what his motivations are and what he's doing, and then we kind of see these outside forces influencing him, some bad people that he has, some real connections to due to his past. That relationship adds a danger aspect to Rand, in my opinion. Having people like Lanfear, Moradin talk with him, having the Dark One talk with him occasionally, it lends a level of danger to the series that I think goes underappreciated in some circles. And in addition to that, he has his main trio. His love interests are fine. I don't think they're perfect, but they're good. And his relationship with the nations, politics, all very good. To reiterate, it's really the relationship with self with Rand that gives him the point here. Never have I seen internal struggle with a character executed so well. Now we have who would win in a fight, and I'd like to address Rand's last matchup real quick, because a lot of people brought up that Matt had a medallion, therefore Rand would have lost the fight. You are incorrect. I don't like taking strong stances on the who would win in a fight one, because it's like the least serious point of any of them, but one, Matt has died from Sayadin before when Ravine struck him, spoiler alert, and he was brought back, yes, but he still died. And it only take a couple seconds for Rand to subvert the medallion in some way, certainly not a long enough time for Matt to actually kill him. And then that is completely disregarding the fact that at the end of the series, at his absolute peak, which I always take all characters in their peak, Rand is no longer using any form of channeling. He just wills something to be lighting, and it does. Therefore, I'm pretty sure he could just will Matt dead, and it would happen, especially since Matt at the end of the book is no longer Tel'Viren. So I think that would pretty much sum up that fight. Bringing that into the fight with Kelsier, I think it's pretty easy to say that Kelsier would lose to Rand at the end of the series because, once again, he seems to have mild to major reality warping. We're not given much of a scale. We're just given one instance of it. But with zero exertion coming from Rand doing it, it's hard to say where he falls. If there's anyone who could possibly be fast enough to just land a blow really quickly, it would be someone like Kelsier or Drizzt. I could maybe see Drizzt being fast enough, but not Kelsier, especially with the standard situation of them just starting 10 feet apart and Kelsier having no magical protection whatsoever. I think Rand would quite handily take this one. And now we have who would do better in the other's world. Rand here very poorly. I've covered this again. I don't like taking away people's magical ability when I throw them in other worlds, even if maybe it should be. It just takes away such an integral part of their character. It would almost feel silly to just remove that. You have an entirely different character you're now dealing with. So I'm going to go ahead and say he would eventually go mad in Mistborn, and he would probably not handle it the best, likely causing a massive extinction event in some kind of city or area. Kelsier, on the other hand, in Wheel of Time would probably do really well as long as he can stay in the shadows, which he's very good at. I don't see Aes Sedai easily being able to track him down, and even people like warders would certainly struggle in combat with him. Kelsier is a fantastic combatant physically, and his magic lends a whole lot to his ability in terms of stealth fighting and manipulating people and calming emotions, and they would have no way of detecting and preventing it. So I think overall, Kelsier would certainly have an edge here in the fight of surviving in the Wheel of Time world, at least long enough to build a reputation to establish he's not a madman, he's not going to go insane, and maybe just go to the Borderlands or go off to some other land and help where he would be accepted. So yeah, I think Kelsier takes the tiebreaker point. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. There's some interesting things coming up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support the channel. Hope you all are having a great day. Peace.